Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, a predictive mock draft to help us decide who are going to be the best players available for the Eagles at 15 and 18 overall. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to a Thursday edition of Locked On Eagles, episode 4 or 5 this week. Download it into your phone wherever you get the show. We're available free all day, every day, Monday through Friday, in video form as well on YouTube. And we're always talking birds on Twitter at Locked On Birds, at GC24_football, and at DiBiase LOE. Gino, it's not Mock Draft Monday, and we're not doing a 7-round Eagles mock, but we are going to do a first-round predictive mock draft across the NFL, because what I want to do is, we've talked so much about prospects the Eagles will be interested in on both offense and defense, philosophies of when to take certain positions, what they need both short-term and long-term. And, the mock drafts have helped us kind of understand, who's going to be available. But I want to dive deeper into that and actually do like a predictive, what we think is going to happen mock draft to help us determine, close to what we think is going to be the best players available that makes sense for the Eagles at 15 and 18. So once we get to 15, we'll list off, 5 BPAs, and same with 18 overall, because, again, Gino, the draft is so unpredictable, but we're going to try to make the most sense of it and see what we should expect for the Eagles.
I personally like to do this activity just like on my own, because when you get into these simulators, like you can't take into account things like quarterbacks going way higher than most people expect.
Because most mock drafts on, we don't see 3 or 4 guys going.
No, and with the talk of it, it seems like I would predict Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, and Matt Corral all to go in the top 15, in my personal opinion. And when you go through these simulators, that doesn't take that into account, which takes off more defensive linemen, more pass catchers, which most of the time in most drafts get pushed down the board because of this quarterback issue. You could look at the Pat Mahomes, Deshaun Watson draft, not so much. They go at 10 and 15. But I would say in 9 out of 10 drafts, Lou, you're looking at 3 to 4 quarterbacks going within the top 12 picks.
Right. And I do think that this year you could compare to that 2017 class where maybe there aren't as many, sure bet first round, top 10, top 15 picks. But I don't know, man. Like you said, I think Willis is going to go higher than you still see in mock drafts. I think he's going second overall. You mentioned Kenny Pickett, I think is going to go top 10. Matt Corral's getting a lot of momentum lately. And Desmond Ridder, I saw a report a couple days ago that most teams see him as a first-round pick that might be the most pro-ready quarterback. And so even in a class like this, I think teams see around the league guys like Josh Allen, become stars even with a lower floor, and they might be more willing to take risks and keep taking quarterbacks until they get it right. So I wanted us to be able to control the mock draft for each team, and we're not going to be, erratic with it. We want to keep it responsible and see exactly who the Eagles will be dealing with at 15 and 18. But again, like you said, it's easier to control it ourselves because there's certain things that these simulators just don't take into account.
No, and you can't put in there like Matt Rule, who's in his 3rd year and desperately needs a quarterback.
And the fact that he recruited, Kenny Pickett at Temple. Those just things aren't, they're predictive simulators, but to only a certain degree.
Yeah, more based on like the needs that they put in there based with like what the strengths of the position groups are in the mock draft. But when you do this, I think more times than not, you'll probably get a more accurate read when you go about doing it by hand, because you can take things into account. If you think there's a position where a team could trade up, you could add that in there as well. I remember, I think it was right before I joined you, so the 2018 draft year, when I was working at Philly Sports, Liam and I did a predictive mock there, and we went through, and I had the Bills trading up for Josh Allen, which they inevitably went on and did, and I hit on the Trey Edmonds pick. So you could take things into account like that. But for this, Lou, I think this is going to put us in a better position to know what you're saying. The best player available, like who is going to be that chunk of 3 to 4 guys at 15 and 18 that we would really consider. And if not, with a realistic view on it, we might have to trade back when it's all said and done at 18 and make a pick at 15.
All right, let's get into that predictive mock draft coming up next. This is Locked On Eagles. We're going to go through our predictions for pick 1 to 14 to see what the Eagles could be dealing with BPA-wise at 15 overall. Same thing moving forward in the show with 18. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
But before we get into that, just like the NFL draft, it is a gamble, and a lot of things in life are a gamble. If you're driving on the side of the highway, you probably see the Powerball number, which is upwards of 300 million at this point. But hey, if you just want to bet on something that you're familiar with, something that a fan of the Locked On Eagles podcast would like to do, go to betonline.net, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Eagles podcast. You just take your phone right here, go on your laptop, make sure you go to betonline.net. You can make any player prop that you want. You could bet on any sport that's going on. You have Champions League semifinals are coming up. The NBA playoff play-in games are happening right now. I know Lou is really excited to see how the NBA shakes out. My Colorado Avalanche are buzzing right now. Best team in the league. They're going to have a chance to win the Stanley Cup playoffs. Any sport you like. Football, you can bet on the draft. Anything you want to do is possible at betonline.net. Make sure you bet responsibly. And always know us hosts here at the Locked On Eagles podcast are going to the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, betonline.net.
All right, Eagles fans, welcome back into this Thursday edition of Locked On Eagles, and we thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Make sure as well, starting Thursday, April 28th, to tune in to the Locked On NFL Draft's live coverage of the 2022 NFL Draft with all 3 days of real-time analysis from our extensive lineup of experts and insiders, including Gino and I. And for those of you dying to know who your team's going to take, catch Odyssey and Locked On's NFL Mock Draft Special, hosted by Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson of the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show, all week leading up to the first pick. And Gino and I are getting ready for the draft too. Gino, it's 2 weeks away from today.
Brother.
It is coming. So what we're trying to do today is get a good understanding, and we've been doing this for the most part on Mock Draft Mondays, but today really controlling the first round ourselves with a predictive mock draft where me and you are going to control. You know, you're going to take the Jaguars number 1 overall. I've got Detroit. We're going to go back and forth, pick who we think is going to go at these spots. So then we can get a good understanding of who the best player available is going to be for the Eagles at 15 overall and then 18. We'll do our top 3 BPAs based on who we think the Eagles will select. So let's start that thing off right now, Gino, and take a look at the Jacksonville Jaguars at 1 overall. It felt like, Aiden Hutchinson was a favorite to go 1 for months, and then it felt like Evan Neal a tackle. But now you got Trayvon Walker getting some momentum. Where's your head at with this number 1 overall pick with Doug Peterson in Jacksonville?
I think the Trayvon Walker talk is 100% real.
Yeah.
Like, you look at a player like that, the ability to come off the edge with traits to grow into his game some more. I see what Jacksonville is saying when they make that pick, but I would go with Kayvon Thibodeau in my opinion. But personally, I think Trayvon Walker is going to end up being the pick. I don't think Hutchinson, that's kind of cooled a little bit. Who knows? They could be playing just a little bit of ring around the rosy with the rest of the league here. But I truly think that Trayvon Walker, with the rise, with his testing at the combine, I think he does come out as the number 1 player in this class.
It's pretty insane. I mean, for a lot of the offseason, he was a top 15 pick, but now that he might go 1 overall, I love his traits and versatility. But yeah, I'm with you. The momentum is real with Walker to Jacksonville. And I think it's the same thing with number 2 overall with Detroit. I just think Malik Willis is going to go to the Lions. And you look at, they coached him at the Senior Bowl. You never know when you're going to be up at the top of the draft again. Even though Detroit doesn't look like a great team in 2022, Malik Willis offers as much upside as, to me, any prospect at quarterback over the years, not just in a weaker class this year. I think they're going to want to hit on their guy now, and there's just not a lot to hate about Willis's game. So they could come back around with that second first-round pick. They could try for 2023. But, Gino, when you're picking 2nd overall, when you do have an option like Willis with that kind of upside, I think you got to strike, and I think they're going to do it.
I do too. I think the Aiden Hutchinson story would be cool, like bring the hometown kid back to Detroit, but they need a quarterback, man. Like Jared Goff is not sticking around there. And what did they acquire in the Jared Goff trade? Plenty of first-round picks. And what do you do with that and a team who doesn't have a franchise quarterback? Picking at number 2, you take the one guy who could potentially be a franchise quarterback in this class.
So we have the Houston Texans here at number 3 overall. Kind of an interesting situation. Most, mocks, we haven't seen Aiden Hutchinson available at this time. They could go offensive line. There's a lot of directions Houston could take.
I think Aiden Hutchinson for Houston is a very good pick because he'll bring in a culture there that'll really just hit home for a team that has had a lot of off-field issues being the focus for this franchise. Aiden Hutchinson, I know the NFL paints this guy like Superman and he's going to be treated like such. I think for Houston, who badly needs a player on that side of the ball, on offensive line, they still do have Laramie Tunsil at left tackle. I don't think they go tackle there. Maybe with the amount of offensive linemen and defensive linemen and quarterbacks, they could get one of those top guys at 13 where they do pick again. But I think they get one of the premier players in this group and get Aiden Hutchinson, who, like you said, maybe on many media mock boards, he isn't this far, but like I say all the time, the NFL isn't the media, man. Like it can fall completely differently. And in this year, especially, I don't think there's a Trevor Lawrence to say, he's surefire number one, man.
Exactly. Trayvon Walker going number 1 overall is the perfect example of that. And you got a guy in Evan Neal from Alabama, Gino, maybe the top tackle on the board here for the New York Jets. And I think they'd be running to the podium here. They got to do everything they can to make Zach Wilson work. And it was a disastrous rookie season. A lot of that it's on him, but also that situation was just a nightmare. And he still has all the traits and the upside that it's worth, again, surrounding him with talent and making this work, especially after what happened with Sam Darnold. So I think the Jets with 2 first-round picks, a receiver could be there. There's going to be, you could still have a shot at the top receiver at 10 overall. You got to take a tackle here and protect Zach Wilson.
Even with Mekhi Becton and Georgia Fetty there, you still think they end up taking a tackle?
I think they got to do it, man. With that pick, when it comes to value, I don't know. I'm not a big Becton guy, so
okay,
I'm going to go tackle,
Fair. I think the next New York team follows in the footsteps of the pick before that. You talk about an offensive line situation that is just in dire straits in this division of all divisions with Chase Young and Tank Lawrence and Josh Sweat and the line that the Philadelphia Eagles possess. The Eagles need to add, or the Giants need to add, let's say, an Eagles stopper, a Cowboys stopper. I think Ike Ekwonu is that guy who's probably the best tackle on some boards. I think the Giants would be in love with having the ability to go and take that position, and having a premier player in Ike Ekwonu would be a huge, huge upgrade over what they've had in past years. I mean, we know what their offensive line play was. They need it in the worst of ways.
I don't think the Panthers should do this, Gino, but Matt Rule gives me a lot of Chip Kelly vibes to a certain degree, and he's going to do things his way. I think he's going to take Kenny Pickett. I don't think he's worth a top 6 pick, a top 10 pick. I wouldn't take him in the first round. It's the same logic with Mac Jones. I don't think he'll ever be a star. So why am I taking a quarterback in the first round with my first pick that I'm going to give multiple years when I don't think he has that ceiling? Maybe they do, but I feel like it's more of a floor pick, but I think it's going to happen. I think Pickett's going to Carolina.
I think you're right on. I think they take one of the two, either Matt Corral or Kenny Pickett.
They should take Corral. I think it'll be Pickett.
We've heard that they loved him at his pro day, Kenny Pickett. They talked to him. They took him out to dinner, the whole 9. Could it be where there's smoke, there's fire, or could it be one of those smoke screens where they do want to go and grab Matt Corral? Regardless, I don't think they take a tackle like most people are saying. I know Peter Schrager said they were interested in Charles Cross at number 6.
Yeah.
I think they go quarterback, man. Like, they're in a very desperate situation for a coach who's on that last string. And, like, I'd rather go down taking a swing at a quarterback if I was a coach, Lou, than taking an offensive tackle and saying, all right, we're going to ride it out with Sam.
And when he's desperate and he's going down swinging, he's going to want to do it with his guy, I think. And I think that is Kenny Pickett. Gino, you have the Giants again here at 7 overall.
I think they go edge rusher here, Lou.
Just feel the deep side,
personally, I'm going to have them take Jermaine Johnson because coming off of Dave Gettleman, I don't know if Joe Shane would want to take a swing at a guy like Thibodeau, who
you're either staying disciplined for the predictive mock or you don't want to see Tibbs go to the Giants. Either
no,
way,
I think he ends up in either Seattle or the Jets with 9 or 10. But personally, I just think that Gettleman would have taken Kayvon Thibodeau, but I don't know if Joe Schoen wants to come off on that foot saying, okay, we took a guy who fell a little bit. You know how I feel on this discussion, but around the league, that is the discussion. I think Joe Schoen plays it safe, gets Jermaine Johnson, who's still a premier player in this class, Lou, and is in that tier 1B that we have talked about this entire draft cycle.
So I'm going to switch it up here. I think Atlanta is going to go quarterback, and I think they're going Desmond Ridder.
Wow.
I really do think it's going to happen. I like Marcus Mariota. I'm a believer in him still, and I would give him a year, but I think that the NFL likes Desmond Ridder a lot more than the media does. I think they see him as the most pro-ready guy. He's an elite athlete when it comes to quarterbacks. He's tall. He's the best processor, I think, of all of these guys coming out. He's got traits. I don't think he has any like true elite traits, but I think he might, they say Pickett has the highest floor, but I think Ritter's the best bang for your buck outside of Malik Willis. And I think he's going to go to Atlanta, and you have Mariota. You don't have to rush him, but he could be the starter too. So I think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks that go here in the top 10. I think Ritter's going to go ahead of Corral.
I don't hate that at all. I mean, you're going into a situation where Marcus Mariota is your top guy. Like, that screams we're taking a quarterback.
Yeah.
And we haven't focused much on Atlanta in this draft cycle, and probably for a reason, because we're not an Atlanta Falcons show. But I'm sure that there's huge discussions going on over at Locked On Falcons about this exact possibility. Do you take a player in Kayvon or Kyle Hamilton, who are probably the better prospect, or do you take a guy at a position where you just traded away your 2-decade-long starting quarterback and you're going in there with a guy who hasn't started in nearly 3 seasons?
So, Gino, you have the Seattle Seahawks here at 9. They're kind of in a similar boat where it's like you have a young player in Drew Lock, but is it worth giving him a whole year and not doing anything else? Like Atlanta, you could say the same thing with the Steelers and Mitchell Trubisky, players with upside that were top 2-round picks. But, when you're in a top 10 situation, again, in teams like this that haven't always been horrible, you might want to pounce. But the Seahawks are, I feel like, I don't know, man. They're interesting.
I think they just get beat out
on
taking Desmond Ridder. I think Ridder is almost like a plug and play to like what Russell Wilson could do inside that offense.
Which I think is what Pete Carroll wants. I mean, the guy's almost 80 years old.
Absolutely. He wants to still compete. Like, there's a reason they still have DK. They haven't traded Tyler Lockett. He firmly believes that they're going to compete even without Russell Wilson. But right now, if you want to compete and you believe that either Geno Smith or Drew Lock is going to be your quarterback, I think they go with the best offensive lineman available, Lou. Like, they don't have Dwayne Brown anymore at left tackle. Charles Cross, I think, would be a great pick for them. They don't get one of the top 2 guys, but they get a guy who, to some, is one of the most athletic and truly, I would say, physical offensive tackles that would do very well in a division where, man, there are some killers on the edge.
I think the Jets could go receiver here, but you can make the case that, they have Elijah Moore still. They did pay Corey Davis just a year ago. They're helping out Zach Wilson with more offensive linemen with that 4th overall pick. I think Kayvon Thibodeau is the best player available here, and the Jets need pass rush help. I mean, when was the last time they had a premier edge rusher on the defensive line? Even those Rex Ryan defenses, I feel like never really had that guy. They even tried in the first round with players like Quentin Coples and totally busted out. I think Thibodeau is just too good a value here, and I think he's going to go still within the top 10 despite all of the narratives that have formed around him this offseason, right or wrong.
I think that's a great pick for them value-wise, and Joe Douglas, a guy who we know thinks very similarly to Howie Roseman. The Eagles have shown interest in Kayvon Thibodeau, and I know the Jets have definitely shown interest in Kayvon Thibodeau. They might do it with that first pick that they have, but if they want to take the offensive line to shore that up like you did earlier, taking Kayvon Thibodeau is a no-brainer for them, a franchise who seriously just longed to have a premier guy at that position. So many high picks on defensive linemen in the last decade that just haven't hit out. Quentin Coples is probably one of the worst examples of that, but you look at guys like Quinnen Williams and Leonard Williams as well. Like, those guys didn't live up to their hype. They're going to take another swing at a guy who could get to the quarterback.
All right, man, you got Washington. You have to take on all the NFC East teams today. So what are you doing for Carson Wentz?
This one hurts. It's not going to help Carson Wentz, but it's at a position where they do lose Landon Collins. They need safety help. They have a little bit of youth at corner, but they so badly need safety help there in Washington. I know we do in Philadelphia. I would have liked to see him stick around until 15, but he's too good of a player to get past the top 10, in my opinion. And if he's there at 11, Washington has a need to shore up the back end. Go out and get Kyle Hamilton, who for sure in a way is an instant impact starter for Washington.
In this kind of scenario, you could see the Eagles try to trade up like we did this past Monday to 10 to get Kyle Hamilton, to get Ahmad Sauce Gardner. But here, just for the sake of, sticking with a predictive, 1 through 18 mock, we're going to just not do trades and see what could be available if the Eagles stay put. As much as I want Gardner to fall, I think he is a special corner. I would have, even last year with Surtain and Horn, had Gardner over both. I think he's going to go here at 12 to Minnesota. They've invested a lot of first-round picks in corners over the years. Mike Zimmer really didn't hit on, any of them, like Gladney, Hughes, Trey Waynes. I mean, it's been bad since Xavier Rhodes. But Gardner, I think it's tough to miss on that kind of prospect. I mean, not in perfect film, but nearly perfect.
Minnesota's almost in a Philadelphia Eagles situation where Patrick Peterson is probably a little more advanced than Darius Slay in terms of age, but they need an heir apparent there at the outside cornerback position. And you know what happened with Jeff Gladney and all the off-field situation. They no longer have him. Sauce Gardner, great pick for them. And I think Houston, missing out on Sauce, wants to make sure they get the next best cornerback. I think they go Derek Stingley. I think it's a really realistic option and fit for them. They need a true cover corner on the outside. They go back to the LSU tree. They get a guy in Derek Stingley who ran through the roof. He's going to be able to cover basically every single wide receiver in that division. I don't think there would be anybody that he can't run with there in the AFC South. And I think Houston's on their way to getting back on track in terms of adding youth to that organization.
The Baltimore Ravens are a team that normally goes best player available. They love to invest in the defense, the trenches. I know they just brought back Calais Campbell, Gino, but that's a player on his last legs. They got Owe on the edge this past season. I think they would go with Jordan Davis here. I think he's just too good to pass up. It's a very Baltimore Ravens, Ozzie Newsome, even though he's not running the team anymore, type of move. The fact that he fell here, I think, is too good a value to pass up. He's not, some people are going to see his size and think he's the next Danny Shelton, like nose tackle. That's not worth the pick. He's not that guy. He's worth it here. And Baltimore jumps. So we look at what the Eagles have to offer at 15, based on this predictive mock. Like, who would you say are the top 3 BPAs based on what they would take?
At the positions of need right now, I would say Devontae Wyatt is probably number 1. Then probably Trent McDuffie or Andrew Booth. That's that next one. And then take your pick of the wide receivers. I think they'd be happy to land any of those 3. Personally, I think the depth drop-off at the interior falls significantly after the 2 Georgia guys. I think they'd be just as happy to land Devontae Wyatt as they would Jordan Davis at that first pick. With the way the wide receivers are falling, Lou, I think you could grab one later in the draft. Same with cornerback. I mean, they're falling a little bit, and we could probably grab one of those 3 guys. I know Kyer Elam would probably be an option there too at 18. But Devontae Wyatt, looking at the Saints, they could potentially use an interior disruptor of that magnitude. Jerry Tillery never really evolved into what they thought in Los Angeles. He could be an option there too. I say go with Devontae Wyatt, who could probably and realistically be the best player on their board currently.
Yeah. And I don't want to take Wyatt there, but I agree with you predictive wise. They would likely do that. I want to believe that they're going to go corner or, safety is kind of tough in the first round after Hamilton, but I want to believe they're going to go corner in round 1, linebacker, receiver. They do have another pick, though, to do that. I see.
Well, look at the 2 teams behind them, Lou. New Orleans probably wouldn't take one. Los Angeles probably won't take one after investing in J.C. Jackson. You drafted Asante Samuel Jr. high last year. I think you could get 2 spots without missing on one of your corners. I don't know if you could do that with the interior because, let's say Pittsburgh, Lou, they want to jump up. They're in love with Wyatt. We know how much they liked Fletcher Cox. They have a need at the interior too. I'm looking at that scenario as well, but I still think Devontae Wyatt, like if we get him at 15, I'm not going to be upset about it. one bit.
All right, Gino, we have 18 still, so we're going to do the Saints and Chargers before we get into the best players available for 18 coming up next. But first, shout out to a couple of our sponsors of Locked On Eagles, and one of them is Shady Rays. It's an independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses, but not for that same price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' insane protection program. Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every pair. They'll send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. Give them a try, and if you don't love them, you'll pay nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's promo code LOCKEDON for their best deals of the season. 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. And we're also sponsored today by rockauto.com. Save time and money when choosing Rock Auto. Don't choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store, or a car dealership, especially with the way gas prices are right now. Cars are a big enough expense. Save time and money with Rock Auto. Their prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you could need. Brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Head over to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, and make sure you write down Lockdown in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. All right, Eagles fans, welcome back into Locked On Eagles. It's a Thursday edition of the show. We're going through a predictive 1 through 18 mock draft in the first round, Gino, to see who the best players available will be for the Philadelphia Eagles at 15 overall and then 18 as well. So taking a look at what we did so far, when it comes to who the best players were for the Eagles at 15, it was, as you said, pick your poison at receiver. Could be Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jameson Williams. Then likely one of the corners, Andrew Booth or Trent McDuffie. And then, considering who we think they would take, who's high on their board, Devontae Wyatt, the interior defensive lineman. I this year want to focus more on the second and third level, but this is predictive, and I agree with you that this probably would be the scenario that does play out, and they still do have that 18th pick to go receiver or corner, maybe even safety or linebacker if they want to. It does depend on what the Saints and Chargers do here, Gino. This is the pick that the Saints traded with the Eagles for. What do you think they do with it? Or actually, this is my pick. And, Gino, for me, I think they'd go quarterback. I really, when they made that move and you trade a future first-round pick, I don't know. I know in 2018 we thought that was for Lamar Jackson, and they ended up taking Marcus Davenport. But I don't know if they're going to do that again. To me, I know Jameis Winston just re-signed, but I think the Saints want to get their guy, especially considering next year you don't have a pick. And I think Corral has the upside that's worth a shot here at 16.
Agreed. Put it on the board, my friend. I mean, you don't make that move by rushing a first-round pick from 2023 to 2022 and leave yourself in a barren wasteland as it stands for next year without identifying that position that
you're not doing that for a corner. I don't know. That wouldn't make sense to me again. It didn't make sense then, but at least you had Drew Brees. So,
and that was a Sean Payton mentality. I mean, I know him and Mickey Loomis were hand in hand in that player.
And it's win now. They had Brees. Yeah. They were more comfortable dealing future picks. Them doing that for a lineman this year wouldn't make any sense to me.
No, not at all. I don't think that would be the way to go. And you could get your lineman there at 19. Yeah. You know that the Chargers got Rashawn Slater last year. They're not probably going to look to get a guy at that position. The Eagles, very well what we have here. Just like we were thinking with cornerbacks on our pick, Lou, I think they're thinking like that on offensive line as well as quarterback, because then you have Pittsburgh, who really could use a quarterback, and I think they take that next best guy available. Probably not New England, probably not Green Bay, probably not Arizona, Dallas. So you got to make sure that Pittsburgh isn't going to trade in front of you. Make sure you get your guy now and don't allow them a couple more picks to, let's say, go up with LA here, go up with the Eagles at 18. I think that's a smart selection for what the Saints need.
Yeah. What are you thinking with the Chargers here right before we get to the Eagles' final pick at 18?
I don't know if they would go wide receiver. I don't know if they go offensive line. Could they
especially
go
with the Slater
cornerback
pick last year?
I think this is a decision where maybe they go like the interior of the offensive line
I was thinking
potentially.
Linderbaum.
Yeah, I was thinking Linderbaum here as well. Like upgrade at center. You already have a solid offensive line. You get another guy that's going to be there for Justin Herbert's tenure. And yeah, if he doesn't play right away, it doesn't really matter because you have one of the best rosters in the league, and you just happen to play in the hardest division last year, which found you picking at the 17th overall selection.
So, Gino, it's tough here. I mean, when it comes to the Eagles at pick 18 overall, the three best players available based on what I think they'll do, based on their rankings, I would say probably Jameson Williams, probably Andrew Booth, and then, I mean, pick your poison between like Trent McDuffie and then maybe Chris Olave. I think they really do like Olave. They met with him today in Philadelphia. I think it's got to be after taking a defensive lineman with Wyatt at 15 that it's got to be corner receiver here. Mm-hmm. It would be really tough to not come away with a corner, especially with heading into the draft, the hole they have short-term and long-term opposite Slay. And then when Slay is gone, I think Andrew Booth is, to me, the best player available based on what they need, what they want. And I think receiver is just deeper right now. And I'd be more comfortable with the options in round 2 there. And you have Devontae Smith and Quez Watkins. Corner, you got to do this, man. I mean, again, as we've said over the last few shows, that you took one in the first 2 rounds ever if you're Howie Roseman. And Booth and McDuffie are worth it. I think it would be Booth.
I do too. Length, athleticism, ability to match man-to-man. I think he is a guy that we are interested on this podcast. The Eagles are interested in as well. A big-time program, covered big-time players in the ACC. I mean, look at the tournament games that he played in as well for Clemson his first couple of years there. You're not going to find me on the opposite side of this, especially after how well A.J. Terrell has kind of panned out. And I feel like we're in the same kind of mindset with Andrew Booth and Terrell, where it's like they're almost the forgotten guy in this class because of the guys like Derek Stingley, of Sauce Gardner. He kind of falls by the wayside, but still first-round talent by many regards.
All right, Gino, we went with Devontae Wyatt and Andrew Booth at 15 and 18 overall. A lot of linemen, receivers, and corners as the BPAs, and I think that's what's going to make sense for the Eagles, Gino. I think they are going to look at the corner position, receiver, and defensive line. I think you can bet on 2 of those 3 spots being the first-round picks. And based on this predictive mock, it's crazy we didn't have receivers going early, but so it would be deeper. But even if you switch some things up, right, you didn't have Corral or Ritter go, or you changed the Jets taking one here and there, receiver is going to be deeper, and I think this would be the route they take and invest in defense early, which is, to me, what they're going to need to do for the long-term future.
I'm all in on taking every pick on defense seriously at this point. Like, take one wide receiver and spend the rest on defense because they seriously have holes at cornerback that they need short-term, long-term, safety, short-term, long-term, defensive line more long-term than short-term, but they have big issues there in linebacker. Now without this third pick, it's kind of fallen by the wayside in many of our discussions, which still is a pretty big need there as well. So in 2 weeks from tonight, Lou, we're going to end up with 2 impact players, fingers crossed, at 2 positions of needs, fingers crossed, that the Eagles hopefully have as their best player available to fit the system that Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon want to play.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Eagles. Guys, thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We're back with another episode tomorrow for our 5th episode of 5, Monday through Friday. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're available in YouTube on video form as well on YouTube. And we're always talking birds on Twitter at Locked On Birds, at GC24_football, and at DiBiase LOE. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for listening and watching, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.